for the end. Prepare for doomsday, but you already dead. Prepare for combat, they will chop off your head. You would think this is a joke till you see the bloodshed. Somebody help me now, this world is out of control. I think I'm losing my mind, I think I'm losing it all. Some people know what I know, some people see what I see, and I'm sure these people are just as crazy as me. How can you be normal if you know what's going on? How can you be happy when you know so much is wrong? Damn right I'm paranoid, if you're not, then you're not aware of the stare that'll breathe down your block. Keep you on lock, keep you with ignorance, keep you from flowing freely with the wind currents. This is it, this is how, this is why, this is self-destruction.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. Today is Thursday, February 23rd. You're our Lord 2017, and you're listening to a Gen Pop Media production. I want to start out by saying something I've forgotten to say the last couple weeks before we get into hellos and topics and everything. You guys really need to... What this show is about is getting you to do your own research. This is not down the conventional hole. It's down the rabbit hole. We wouldn't want anyone to take what we're saying as any sort of gospel whatsoever. Pardon the pun. We're just trying to get people to do their own research and to feel free to engage us on the topics that concern them. So that being said, we got a bunch in the studio today. We're starting to turn into like the old happy hour show where they need a bigger table. So we got the regulars. We got DiBiase and Hooper. We got Tony D showed up, and we're welcoming Nick back. Welcome back, Nick. Good to see you. Hope you had fun last week.
Yeah, thank you. I loved it.
I heard it got more interesting after you left the show than it was during the show.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true. I was telling him about the when we went to the gas station. The homeless guy came over. Then this other dude the ride dude.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Was getting a hooker and cocaine.
You did get his phone number, didn't you, Dave?
We drove him home. So
right.
Did you get his phone number though?
No, but
I lost a bet with my wife.
That I got his phone number.
Girlie's like, you should call him and find out. Follow up on that. I'm like, I'm sure Hooper got his phone number.
Didn't even.
No.
Oh, I just lost $10 to my wife.
Yeah, well.
I guess it's less than I normally lose, right?
Yeah.
So, what's going on, guys? How is everybody?
Good.
Yeah, man, good.
I feel real good, actually.
Yeah, yesterday was my anniversary. Was yesterday.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, thank you.
Work or marriage?
Marriage. The only one that's worth announcing. I would announce my work anniversary. But 9 years.
Nice, congratulations!
And if you haven't noticed, I picked a day I can never forget. So 2. It's very simple. I'll never forget it.
I like it.
There was planning involved in that.
Yeah, my cousin Brandon took 11, 12, 13.
See, never can forget it.
Yeah.
So I guess he could, but unlikely.
Not Brandon.
So that's it there, man. Yesterday was our anniversary, and had dinner, a couple of beers. That was it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. So anybody got anything they want to throw out there, talk about, or anything before we get into topics? Oops.
No, I'm just going to throw out that I'm going to throw out some praise for the forces above us. Because actually I really do think you've got to, there's only so much you can learn by reading and conventional study. Like some of the mysteries that are in the Bible, you actually need some supernatural assistance. It's unconventional for me to say it because I did not think this way at all 4 or 5 years ago. But it's weird. Like as you go through the things that were total question marks before suddenly come to light when you go back over them for the 5th or 6th time sometimes. It's sort of strange.
But true.
Look, this book, based on what we've been taught, is strange. But again, when you realize we've been taught by the bad guy in this book, yeah, it would seem strange. So strange that people dismiss it offhand, and that's part of the plan. And to just have figured out, Nick and I were talking on the way up here, we found, everyone here is here because they found a chink, a glitch in the matrix, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, not chink the racial slur. Just want to clarify that for everybody out there.
And a lot of people, when they see that, they just dismiss it, or it's cognitive dissonance outside their worldview. They don't want to look any further. They don't.
Well, many are looking for any reason they can to discredit the Bible so they can just move on and believe what they want to believe.
Well, interestingly enough, some people that I've met in the past that know almost seem like they memorized that book, like have it memorized, is simply from their cause of trying to prove it not true.
Right.
It's like, you know more about that, what's in there than I do, and the whole purpose is to just prove it, wrong.
Well, there are tons of cases of people, of scientists, researchers, the forensic guy, the famous forensics guy that started reading the Bible with the sole purpose of discrediting it.
Lee Strobel?
Yeah, I think it was Lee Strobel.
Chicago Tribune writer?
No, I'm talking about a police forensic guy. He's got he wrote the Case for Christ. It's like a CS. That's Lee Strobel. That's his name.
He's out of Chicago. He used to be a writer for the Chicago Tribune, and he was getting annoyed with all these Bible people.
Yeah.
So he went into it. He's like, I'm going to prove on paper that this is wrong, so I can show it to you. And he completely ended up. And the same thing happens to everybody.
Oh, who's that?
Is that guy a police officer?
The one I'm talking about is.
Okay, yeah, so he treated it like a cold case.
Yeah, he was in God's Not Dead too.
Okay, I'm familiar.
Then Lee Strobel's a different guy?
But Lee Strobel is someone else I knew about, but I'm specifically talking about a guy who was he was the lead forensic detective for some police department in Southern California.
Yeah, he
was one of the witnesses in God's Not Dead 2, if anybody saw that movie.
I didn't see the 2, no.
A little better than the first.
Was it?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so, I totally agree with you. I know that I can reread the same. I'm at the point now where I'm actually rereading verses and books and parts of books that I've already read at one point or another. And it's amazing how every time you read it, you can get something new from it. It's not something different. It's not that the meaning changes. It's that the meaning gains depth.
Yeah. And sometimes, though, I've had some incorrect
I've definitely
conclusions to my own that I ended up going back and revisiting and ended up going, like I was wrong. This is actually how...
I see what you're saying.
That's one of the reasons that we haven't gone hog wild marketing at this show yet, because that's still happening. Where
this is not going to stop happening, by the way.
Probably not, but I feel like we're just now getting to the point where I feel confident that we're not leading someone astray, or we're pulling some presentation together at the last minute.
Yeah.
But I've had opinions of things, and the way I look at some passages or some facts do a 180.
Yeah.
In fact, some cases what I thought was Jesus was actually referencing the Antichrist, for instance. So
yeah, that's kind of
that's the kind of mistake you want to make.
Yeah, oops.
Yeah, that would probably change your perspective just a tad. Okay, well, today's topic is one that's been off and on for the last several shows. We try to get to it, and then something else more important, like the election, comes up. And so I want to talk about an organization, and this feeds into a lot of the things we've already touched. Dave has mentioned it a few times, but I want to talk about the Council on Foreign Relations.
Yeah,
often referred to as the CFR. And this is an organization that I tripped across in my research for the America as a Christian Nation last summer. And I can't see anything. Well, first of all, any organizations that their sole purpose is to remain secret, secrecy is not good. If they're keeping secrets, it's because there's something bad going on.
Yeah.
Okay. And this organization at its foundation, I think it began with deception in mind, and they can tell people they don't even bother telling people what it is. They don't try to spin it. That's the funny thing.
It's not really secret.
Yeah. Well, it just is. What they do is secret. They never hold minutes. They're not answerable. There's no oversight. They're not answerable to the government, even though they influence government policy.
But they're a nonpartisan organization.
They don't influence government policy. They
create it. Yeah, they create it.
Yeah, I went on their website.
Oh yeah, it's fun stuff.
And checked it out, and it's a nonpartisan think tank essentially.
Yeah.
So it's harmless.
Has anyone
Howard.
been to the Illuminati.com where you can literally sign up to?
No, but I remember you
No,
talking
but
about that.
I have been considering becoming a Knight Templar.
You saw
I
that one?
can't even believe that's a real thing. It's so funny.
But
I think I sent that
every
to you.
time,
You did,
every
yeah.
time I think about joining, I think of what the connotations would be in DiBiase's mind and how he would look at, dude, don't you know? I know there's something I don't know yet about the Knights Templar that
But it
Dave's
would
going
be
to tell me.
it would be cool to be a knight.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be Sir Howard.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
see,
I'm already an ordained minister.
see, Sir, and you are. Which
I
is,
could be Sir Father Howard.
That would Father Sir Howard.
That would get tough with my pronouns. Or,
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Howard,
yeah.
before we get into this, you know who Mika Brzezinski is? You know currently what's going on?
Yeah, she's Fignu Brzezinski's. That's hard to say.
Zbigniew
His
Brzezinski.
daughter, right?
Right. You hear what she just said on...
Oh, I heard it.
I knew there was a brouhaha, but please enlighten me.
Oh, I heard it. I know exactly where you're going. Lay it on us.
She-
You'll love it.
She basically was condemning Trump for using his tweeting.
Tweeting what? Yeah.
It's tweeting.
So
Twittering.
she was basically making comments that he shouldn't do that because he could be influencing people's thinking, and that's the job of the media.
Yeah, she said it. She said,
And it's been
yeah, her exact quote. And I think this was a slip. Like, I think it came out. If you actually listen to and you can look this up and find it, but she said that it's not his job to control what people think. That's our job. She said that just as clear as day.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, oops. That's, oops.
There was a clip I saw today as I was working on the update for the Gen Pop website where it was, oh man, it's the guy with the glasses, not Tucker Carlson.
on which
I think MSN. It's on MSNBC for sure.
Joe Scarborough.
Yeah, Joe Scarborough and a chick
That's
were
her.
talking.
That's
Is that
her.
her?
That's
okay.
her,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Then
Mika
that must have been
short hair blonde
Okay, then
girl,
I didn't
yeah.
get a chance to read it, but that's what they were talking about.
That's what she said.
Well, what was this about?
It's not his job to control what people think. That's our job.
Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough.
Yeah.
They were talking, and you know who? She's the daughter of Zbigniew
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
of
okay.
Which
CFR.
obviously didn't.
Bad guy.
And she's on CNN or MSN, and she basically was condemning Trump for tweeting and
How dare he do her
influencing
job.
influencing people's thoughts, because that's the job of the media.
Yeah,
basically.
we've got several quotes in the 401 book coming out where the heads of CBS, the Washington Times, have essentially the same quote. We tell people what to think. We
What's-
don't report on the news they want. We report on the news we want them
I
to.
would have given
just like the WikiLeaks when.
Yeah, that's why they're portrayed as bad guys. And there are fools out there that think that Julian Assange is a bad guy.
Mhm.
But
he's a hero.
yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people that are going to end up literally going to heaven because he helped fill in the picture that so many of us are in the process of trying to figure out. Because it takes a while before you get to the point where all these conspiracies, you start to realize, oh my gosh, they're all part of the operations of this very nebulous but tightly organized group. We have many names for them, from the Illuminati to the establishment, the shadow government, the
CFR.
Yeah, the CFR is just one of the many entities that are used to, their particular role is influencing policy through how the United States, which is the leader in the world.
And this isn't new organization.
No, because the thing about the CFR, and that's why it really troubled me, I found a couple of links. It was officially formed in New York in July of 1921.
Okay, so a while ago.
Yeah, so this
It's
is
been a minute.
what? This is post World War I, pre World War II, right?
Yeah, and pre-television.
Pre-television. Its logo is a rider on a white horse, doing a Masonic salute, and the Latin for everywhere.
And who was the founders?
I'm sure that's just
Wow.
artistic.
Well, I can tell you that, Tony. I happen to have my notes here. It was originally thought that CFR was an acronym for Carnegie, Ford, and Rockefeller.
I heard that, right?
It was actually James Warburg.
Paul Warburg.
No,
Well, it could have been James.
No,
was-
I'm sorry. I'm too far in.
there
I
are two
apologize.
Warburgs, and it's father.
Yeah,
son.
but at any rate, so another interesting thing is, I find this interesting because it happens within a few years, within about 8 years of the founding of the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve and their hostile takeover of our country,
Which has the same basic
the same basic
components.
thing. Well, it's funny because the same bankers who created the Federal Reserve in 1913, they funded the CFR through dozens of different tax-free foundations. So that's how the CFR got their funding to organize was through the members of the Federal Reserve.
I think the JP,
So you know-
JP Morgan's the Warburgs.
Lawyer, yeah,
Rockefeller is obviously the big one.
yeah.
But what's interesting is
But these are all stand-up dudes.
all these.
Well, if the Federal Reserve's involved, at least the government is involved somehow, right?
Well,
mean,
you
it's
mentioned it's
fine.
not like it's a secret, but yet it's kind of behind closed doors, right? Nobody really knows who they are, who their membership list is. and
I
you can start
remember
going
hearing
through-
about the Council on Foreign Relations during the Vietnam War.
Oh yeah,
And I just assumed it was a congressional subcommittee. I mean, they mentioned him on the news on council, so and so from the Council on Foreign Relations, and they're talking about the Vietnam War. I remember it on television. So I mean, I've known that this name has been in my head since the 70s, and it was only a few months ago that I was like, "Oh my God, what is this?"
Yeah. Well, when you hear that, it sounds like it would be some government subcommittee if they're concerning themselves with
and
foreign
that's what- and
relations.
the Federal Reserve, okay? Do you think there's any accident that the Federal Reserve and the Council on Foreign Relations, these two organizations, privately funded, controlled by the banksters, do you think there's any coincidence in the fact that these names sound like congressional subcommittees or government agencies?
Here's some of the other ones that Rockefeller established also: Council of the Americas, the America Society, the Forum of Americas, the Institute for International Economics, of course, the Trilateral Commission.
Yeah.
So these are all intended to sound like government entities,
Yeah.
just like the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
It's all intended because it makes people
It's
think,
defrauding.
"Oh, this is
Yeah.
okay. It's this is a government thing. It's all right."
Yep. Yeah, in 1950, James Warburg testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and his quote was, "We shall have."
He testified before Congress.
I got Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
Okay, go ahead.
That says, and if the quote's the same, then I'm probably wrong because you've actually done more.
No, I think
attribution.
actually you're. Go ahead.
It was we shall have world government whether you like it or not, by conquest or consent.
Said that in front of.
Senate Foreign Relations Committee is what my notes say.
It's pretty
In
bold.
1950.
Pretty bold statement.
There's so many
That's
things.
not. We have so many of those.
It's pretty bold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was James Paul Warburg, 1950, son of Paul Warburg, who was on Jekyll Island when they had that secret meeting between,
All the bankers.
and
For Federal
that's
Reserve,
where they
right?
laid out the Federal Reserve
Yeah.
plan, and then they got the vote shoved through on December 23rd of 1913 while all the congressmen are boozing at home with their family.
Here's an interesting tidbit. J.P. Morgan. Everyone knows J.P. Morgan as this hugely rich, founder of business. You know how much he owned of his own business?
Huh.
17%. You can guess who owned the other.
Yeah, he was Rothschild Finance.
That's right.
Yeah, he's just
Rothschild.
the Rothschilds are the most famous. I don't even think they're the top of the ladder, but they're economically they're at the top of the chain. In fact, their net worth based on, because you have to understand, every dollar that is in circulation in the world started off as debt somewhere, and it was debt. Yeah, to the quote-unquote Federal Reserve Bank, but you follow the chain of command, it ends up being to the Rothschild banking dynasty. And as of a few years ago, their net worth was estimated at $500 trillion.
That's just under
This is
Beyonce and
Dude, I could totally buy a boat.
that is 1,000 times wealthier than Bill Gates.
but yet they're not
Warren
yet
Buffett.
they're not mentioned in the world's richest.
No, they're very much off the radar. I mean, shows like us expose them, but every dollar and we're only down to just a couple nations now that do not have a centralized banking system. They don't have their banking system, and a dollar can't get into circulation until it becomes debt to them. This was the big problem when we got off of the gold standard, because we in effect allowed this family to become the kings of the world overnight, and money makes everything happen. And when you literally have a printing press for money, what can you not do?
I wonder why they wrote that into the Constitution.
What, to not ever allow anyone to print our money?
Debt can only be paid by gold or silver. Interesting.
Yeah, well, the last
That's because
vestige
they knew.
of-
That's why. That's
Yeah, and
because they knew that this would
they
happen.
just held off. They bided their time. And then when anybody who remembered why we actually founded the country with the principles we founded it on, they just snuck it in there with stupid children, nephews, and grandchildren. And okay.
Well, man, you're instantly powerful, though. I mean, when you can print money out of thin air.
I hear you.
It's the only way we can fund all these wars and all these boondoggles if we go on.
Yep.
Well, the CFR, to get back on that, it is still very much in play. It's still.
Oh yeah, it's alive and active today.
Look at what I was going to bring up is you look at some of its members. At one time, Brokaw, Rather, Brinkley, Rupert Murdoch, all these people, all these news.
Yeah, Diane Sawyer, Barbara Walters,
Barbara
Jim
Walters.
Lehrer, Ted Koppel, William F. Buckley. These are all influential news media members that were part of the CFR, the people who shaped our world in the 60s and 70s and 80s.
Right. Well, starting before that, too.
Yeah,
the
even
newspapers,
before that,
obviously.
yeah.
But,
it says it says here that the CFR's goal was the formation of an incrementally stronger world government. Okay, so former CFR member Admiral Chester Ward, a former judge advocate of the U.S. Navy. He was a CFR member for 16 years before resigning in disgust. When he resigned, he stated, "The main purpose of the Council on Foreign Relations is promoting the disarmament of the U.S., sovereignty and national independence, and submergence into an all-powerful one-world government."
When was that said?
You had to ask that, didn't you?
I just wonder how long ago that
well,
was.
what's interesting when you say that, when it's all one world, you start talking about the UN, because Rockefeller is the one that donated the land in New York City
Right, to make the UN. Yep.
to create the UN, and they're a big force behind United Nations. And all those people are all part of the groups. The Cheneys, Clintons, all
Yeah.
these people are all still.
Yeah, well, we've heard
But
of
understand,
relations.
they're not. It's not like they're all in on it, and they're not all evil just by the fact that they're in there. For some, they don't view it's a. I doubt that many even realize that they're part of something that is, I would classify as evil. It's a rubbing elbows club of you hang out with a bunch of other important movers and shakers. I would have loved to have been in it, at a point in my life.
But if your goal was to control media, Hollywood, TV, movies, all that kind of stuff, that would be exactly what you would do. You'd get all these people involved. You would befriend them all the newspapers and media heads and even actors and what have you, and you would get them involved in all this stuff and be a part of your gang. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. In fact, Adam Weishaupt, you guys know, he's often credited as starting the Illuminati, which it's not a good way to put it. This secret cabal has been around since
He lit the
days of the Roman Empire. Jesus referred to them as the Synagogue of Satan. And you can follow them all throughout history. They just began using the name the Illuminati in 1780. And he had a quote that was in a Freemason publication. And this publication was intended for other lodge masters around the world. And Weishaupt's instructions, they go further. I'm going to read you the quote in a second. But he says, it's very proper to make your inferiors believe, without telling them the real state of the case, that all other secret societies, particularly that of Freemasonry, are secretly directed by us, and this us being the Illuminati. It continues, the candid and liberal inquirer will not ask for further proof that Illuminism and Freemasonry are distinct associations. And my comment is, perhaps now it's easier to understand how newer initiates into Freemasonry themselves, they don't know what they're involved in. And if you're listening right now and you've ever made an oath to something and you don't know what it is, dude, take a second look at what you're doing. Because it's only later on that the terrible truth is revealed, and by then it's too late. It's too late for these guys to get out without serious problems in their life, if not death. But you can understand how these guys have remained hidden, because this was the quote that was going around to all the lodge masters. And this was from 1780 is when this was in print. And it reads, "The great strength of our order lies in its concealment. Let it never appear in any place in its own name, but always covered by another name and another occupation." So what we know of as the Council on Foreign Relations, it would not surprise me at all that really was, did you say Carnegie? Who were the
Carnegie, Ford,
Rockefeller,
Rockefeller, yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. The same way that, insiders of the MK Ultra program, it's, what is that one, Dave? Something, mind...
MK Ultra?
What it stands
manufacturing killers, utilizing something requiring assassination.
Right. And even the Patriot Act. Do you guys know what the acronym for that is? Someone needs to look it up. Tony, you on that?
I'm on the MK Ultra right now.
Okay. Do Patriot Act next. And when you break down what the PAT, it's freaking spooky.
Well, and it wasn't just, obviously, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Ford. J.P. Morgan had his stink all over it because he's actually the one who organized he's the one who came up with the principle. In 1917, he hired 12 high-ranking news managers to determine the most influential newspapers in America. Tasked to figure out how many news organizations it would take, and this is a quote, to generally control the daily policy of the United States. They concluded it would only take 25 of the nation's greatest newspapers to control the news on a daily basis throughout the country. An agreement was made. The papers were bought, and an editor was placed at each paper to ensure that all published information was in keeping with the new policy. When those people were in place, the CFR was formed. The CFR's stated goal was to increase America's understanding of the world.
Really?
So that was their stated goal. It's in the mission statement.
Well, that's, I looked up the USA Patriot Act, right? Now, this all meshes. And it's actually intended to be an acronym. I never knew that until just now.
But now there's the public acronym,
which is spooky enough.
And what's it's
uniting and strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. So that's
the public acknowledged.
Spooky enough, dude. I mean, that's spooky enough because providing appropriate tools required. All right, expand on that a little bit. What tools did they acquire? They deleted much of the Bill of Rights.
The tools that they're...
And apparently that's the tools they needed, I guess, because to obstruct terrorism, which hasn't really...
And the spying.
It's...
So,
but it's done a lot. It's done a lot of good to take out terrorism, though, right? Because there's no terrorism right now, right?
Yeah,
none. No,
it worked.
It worked. Yeah, it worked. It's all.
I heard Sweden was going to put together a version of that.
No raping going on
Yeah.
in Sweden.
Yeah, none.
None.
MK Ultra.
Or Germany.
Manufacturing killers utilizing lethal tradecraft requiring assassinations.
Look,
Nothing-
all of these
What's wrong with that?
Project
I don't
Blue
see a
Book,
problem with that.
they're
No, manufacturing killers. It's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
yeah. In fact, anytime you see a deranged gunman going into an airport to shoot people up, odds are, I'm not saying they all are, but odds are they are MK Ultra, and the ones that do happen to survive show all the classic signs of a mind-programmed guy. You know, they're bugged out, they're detached from reality, they have no memory of the event. And this goes back, I'm sure, much earlier than Sirhan, but that was at the dawning of television when he shot Bobby Kennedy. And I do believe, yes, he shot him, but there were other shooters there also who, you know, the girl in the polka dot dress. And to this day, Sirhan has no memory. And flash forward to Jared or the Denver shooter, and they don't have any memory of what they did either. And these guys are programmed to, you know, the code goes off. It can be a phone call, a special word. It can be a message on a phone, and all of a sudden, it's just like you're hypnotized. We've seen what can happen to someone on stage after a 5-minute hypnosis. And imagine these guys and they typically they're children of military families or Luciferian Satanist practicing families, and they themselves don't even know they're programmed, and they have several even alter personalities, and it's scary. And there's, in fact, I think it's the
Absolutely.
red horse of the Bible. Some people confuse it with war, but there's going to be it predicts the red horse is going to be people just killing each other.
Right. Mass slaughter.
And Russ Dizdar linked that to what he called the Black Awakening, where his line of work took him into... He was already in police stations as a chaplain, and he started to see this just preponderance of satanic crimes that are never reported as satanic crimes. And as he furthered his understanding, he got to the point where he was coming across several other programmed people, and their alter personalities would come out, and they will have no recollection. But I do believe there are millions of people in the United States right now that are programmed whenever something happens, they're just going to go out and start shooting. Like your neighbor's going to come over with the gun.
or whatever.
Good luck with that.
Well, that's why people that are Christian happen to usually be armed, and it's because I think they know.
Yeah, usually they're armed in one way or another. So I'm on CFR.org.
Yeah.
And I'm analyzing the language used here, and I find it very interesting. This is the current website. Like, this isn't history. This is what it is right now.
So like the ClintonFoundation.org.
This is CFR.org.
Oh, okay.
So, okay. And I'm going to question the truth about this, but the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, is an independent, non-partisan membership organization. Now, I question that. I question that. But anyway, think tank and publisher. And then there's a video link here. It says, in this video, members of CFR
Yeah.
explain why CFR is a trusted and indispensable resource. They can't do without it. You cannot
No, we can't.
survive without it.
We can't.
So then you go down, and I find this interesting too. So this is all, this kind of stuff is intentional. So CFR's current membership of over 4,900 is divided among those living in. Now, this is very interesting to me. New York, Washington, D.C., and across the country and abroad. Why don't they just say
Everywhere?
everywhere? Okay, so I just find that interesting. So for those between the ages of 30 and 36, there is the Stephen M. K. Kellen term, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the think tank. You'll love this one. The David Rockefeller Studies Program, CFR's think tank, is composed of more than 70 full-time and adjunct fellows who cover the major regions and significant issues shaping today's international agenda, whatever that might be. Program also includes recipients of several one-year fellowships. Then, now keep in mind, it's non-profit, right? And I'm
like the Clinton Foundation.
I'm a little bit familiar with
.org.
requirements of being a non-profit. Federally, IRS requirements. Right. So then you go down to...
Another federal organization.
Well, then you go... Yeah, it's... Exactly, yeah. They have guidelines for this. So... informing the public debate. They're already, just with that header, they're already flirting with the nonprofit status. But anyway, where did I find that? Oh, the Washington program actively engages decision makers in Congress, the executive branch, and the diplomatic community. Well, that sounds like a nonprofit to me.
Yeah.
Ookie dookie.
I'm sure there's no lobbying going on.
No. Independent task forces work to reach consensus on how to deal with critical foreign policy challenges. CFR's website is a trusted, non-partisan source of timely analysis and context on international events and trends.
Now, partisan means political affiliation, right?
I'm sure none of these people belong to the same political party. I'm sure.
Well, no, they don't, because I don't think Satan is his own political party.
I think he does.
Well, he doesn't. No, they're
just my opinion.
They're across parties, but yes, if you're still Republican or Democrat, like you're brainwashed.
I know I'm being facetious.
Most of our listeners might not get that, though. I mean, it's just a stupid game. It's the Hegelian dialectic. I mean, we have a choice between an independent or Republican, but they're all typically working for the same agenda, which, if you follow it to the top, is literally demonic.
You guys know who Ben Swann is?
It sounds familiar, but
he's an American journalist. I've been studying some of the things that he's done.
Okay.
Interesting. One of the things I was watching where he was talking, it was an interview where he was talking about he was interviewing Mitt Romney and your buddy Paul Ryan.
Okay. Not my buddy. Go ahead.
So he's interviewing him. He's explaining he is on a chair, and there's a guy sitting behind him on a couch, and he's facing Romney and Paul Ryan. And he said he would be talking to the one guy while this guy on his right would be looking over his shoulder listening to the guy behind him. Then he'd turn to the other guy, and he'd start talking like he's talking to Ryan now, and Romney would be looking over the shoulder, taking direction from the guy behind him. He's trying to figure out who this guy is, right? So the interview's over, and he's kind of buddying around with some people, and he says, "Hey, who was that guy sitting behind me on the couch?" "Oh, that's so-and-so from the Council on Foreign Relations."
Of course it was.
Yeah, and
I'm surprised you didn't have Romney on one knee and Ryan on the other with a hand up their back.
Exactly, but they made it sound like it was a good thing because these guys need some counseling on foreign relations.
Foreign relations,
yeah. So, but he said it was very weird because you could tell that they would answer him and they'd look at the guy sitting behind him to make sure that they were saying the right things. So this is how much influence Council on Foreign Relations holds.
Oh yeah, the Council on Foreign Relations. I mean, people have no idea. Again, people have no idea what they do. I mean, what do they do? After World War II, it was the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. They were technically created in 1944. Okay, but the initial planning was done by the CFR's Economic and Finance Group, which was part of the Wartime War and Peace Studies Project. The World Bank and IMF, they act as loan guarantors, and as a scheme for multinational banks. And these were both planned out 20 years in advance by the CFR. Most people think, when you talk about, everybody's heard of the Marshall Plan, right? General Marshall, the Marshall Plan? No?
Is it from history class?
Yeah.
Foggy.
What does the Marshall Plan play into this?
Yeah, because it says the post-war Marshall Plan was actually not invented by General George Marshall. He announced it in 1947 at the Harvard commencement speech, but the Marshall Plan was dreamed up at a CFR study group with David Rockefeller as a secretary. Marshall was simply selected to announce the plan because, as a general, he would be perceived as politically neutral and help garner bipartisan congressional support for the plan. Unknown to the public, the Marshall Plan funds were secretly rerouted by John McCoy, appointed U.S. High Commissioner to Germany, to Jean Monnet, founder of the Common Market, which is involved in the European Union. And McCoy returned home to become the chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations right after that in 1953.
So the Marshall Plan, as it reads here on Wikipedia, officially the European Recovery Program, American initiative to aid Europe.
Yeah.
The U.S. gave $13 billion, approximately $130 billion in current dollar value, economic support to help European economies after World War II. So, and this is something that goes on as you start investigating some of these things. It happens frequently.
Yeah.
These funds that are transferred here and there, but like Dave was saying earlier, these are all funds that are coming from a bank, which we owe now.
Yeah, we don't see the top of the food chain. We see it going around to a bunch of little banks, but we're not able to see up to the top to see that. Well, it's like me taking a quarter out of one pocket, putting it in another pocket, and then another pocket, and going, "Hey, I got a quarter."
Yeah, well, there's an entire section of the book that we're going to leave for Volume 2. And the story really starts, and actually even before 1871, when Albert Pike's letter got discovered after the messenger was struck by lightning. So I think that's, our forces kind of fighting back a little bit. But he's very clear. He said there's going to be 3 world wars, and he described them pretty well. The Second World War was going to set up on purpose this balance of power, which we would later come to be known as the Cold War. And I've got 18 different congressional quotes and citations in here where people that care about this country are trying to figure out why the hell we are funding the Soviet military machine from the early 1950s through even still today, because it was a completely bankrupt business. And the arguments were, look, we are giving money away to these people so that they can purchase weapons, and then those weapons are being used against our soldiers in South Korea and in South Vietnam, which is a great point. But it was part of the plan to keep that balance of power, because that's what was going to lead to Albert Pike's predicted Third World War, which actually is going to be one involving Israel, but there's going to be, based on what Albert
and the communists, I believe, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, communism...
It's basically Russia.
People aren't afraid of communism anymore because the news stopped getting us afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the U.S. is becoming communist. We are becoming socialist. I mean, we're rioting in the streets because everyone doesn't have equal pay and equal rights, and we're losing the foundation of what made this country great, and a new generation of horribly educated people are trying to.
And it's fascinating. It's fascinating when you watch right now, and you make a comment like that, and you start seeing what's going on with the left. You're talking about Keith Ellison, who's going to run the DNC. That's who they're predicting is going to. Well, one of the persons they claim is going to be on the short list. Right?
He'll be the puppet.
He'll be the puppet. But look at exactly, Dave just said you're talking about socialism. Look how left all these people are and what they are doing. They're basically getting up, rioting, talking about, stand up, fight, all kinds of crazy stuff that you would not believe would happen in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable that this is going on in the U.S.
I saw I've got a close friend of mine who passed away several years ago, and I've kept in touch with his son, who's now in his early 20s. And this kid is very bright, okay, and he gets it, okay. And I can't take credit for him getting it from me because I haven't had that much influence on him, but he gets it. And he was going back and forth about racism with a friend of his, and his stance is pretty solid in the fact that we need to get real and move forward. Focusing on the past just kind of makes people mad. We're not going to excuse the past, but you can't blame people that really had nothing to do with what's happened. You can't change the past. It's the past, And he's making a good statement, and he was going back and forth with one of his buddies, who, of course, is, I guess I'm being racist because I'm bringing it up, but, he's a 20-something white kid, okay? And the statements this kid was making on Facebook were blowing my mind. He's like, the only way we're going to get rid of racism, if I were going to get rid of racism, first I would destroy all of the links to the past, and we need to, and I mean, this dude was talking violence.
Oh yeah.
Well, it is an interesting dynamic.
It's like you're a 20-year-old twit typing on Facebook.
The irony of it all, the messaging coming from that group of that group of people, right, is that this is what I find. I actually laugh because it's comical, because you have a group of people that literally are saying that the government needs to control everything. They need to pay for everything, and in order to pay for everything, they need to confiscate everything. And then they call people like us fascists. If you believe that, I have a news flash for you. You're the fascist.
But they do believe it, and they believe it intensely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this dude was
It's
riled up.
Well, they don't have a problem with the police state as long as they're in charge of it.
Yeah, right.
As long as they're in charge of it, they have no problem with violence.
See this?
Look, the Bible even talks about that they're going to use this manufactured need for peace and security. That's going to help usher in the new Satan's one world government. And it says, whenever you hear peace and security, look out.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing it more and more. I mean, we're giving away all of our rights. We were all born into a country where you had to be charged within 24 hours. You had a lot of rules protecting you. You had Miranda rights. You couldn't be kept indefinitely. You couldn't be executed without a trial. Like that's our country now. Like all those things are gone.
Dude, it's gone so far as to where we want to extend due process rights to people who are not even here. I really like to see how this manifests itself, by the way.
Here's an interesting... I'm looking up Albert Pike, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you mentioned it's the Third World War between Islam and the Arabic world, right? But it says, meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on the issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist, and we shall provoke a formidable social catalysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origin of savagery and the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitude delusioned with Christianity whose pronounce that, Dave.
Deistic.
I'm horrible at pronouncing some of these. Spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal but without knowing where to render its adoration. So this, I mean, basically this is...
And this was written
looks like
when was this written?
1871.
Read the rest of that.
Well, okay, if we go
Because
to...
it sounds a lot like 2017.
Okay, finishing we'll receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time.
Yeah, it's their method of operation. Their strategy could be called, it's order ab chaos, order out of chaos. And they are specifically creating so much chaos in the world. And just what we're seeing right now is only 1% of the plan. I mean, it feels chaotic. But we're talking about the kind of chaos that wipes out 4/5 of the population.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be shortages of food. There's going to be rioting. And I think, Frank, there's going to be nuclear war, and that's when I think our little friends in the sky reveal themselves. And that's, for me, the final link where you're going to be able to get all of these different religions to finally join. Now, the atheist has to go. He doesn't have a place in the Luciferian one-world government. The Christian certainly has to go because that is the enemy of the devil, literally. That's why at the end of the day, all of this is geared towards removing that. And whatever is going to appear in the sky is going to present themselves as, oh, we made you guys. We're your gods. We're responsible for all this. Jesus was just an ascended master. Yes, great guy. Another one, Muhammad, another great guy. Islam, Christianity. You're not that far apart, guys. You just got screwed up around the year 0.
You'd have a hard time convincing someone that Muhammad was a great guy. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
No.
Yeah. Like the parents of many of his wives.
Yeah, but look how many people are saying exactly that.
Oh, I know. It's scary.
No, but when it's being told to us by a hologram display in the sky and messages being beamed into your literally ear, so it sounds like it's being whispered, and it's going to be able to reconcile all of the religions of the world in one fell swoop, because all of them will be told, you guys are all partially right and partially wrong. And it's time for this world to unite, because you are part of an interstellar community of planets, or federation of whatever you want to call it.
Star Trek.
And look,
The Federation of Planets.
Star Trek was a predictive programming.
If
It was
we laugh,
soft disclosure.
but this is totally going to happen.
Oh, it absolutely is. There's no doubt about it. And we're going to get sucked into literally an staged interstellar war, but that's what we're going to think it is. And the world will clamor for peace. And all of a sudden, it'll bring everyone together because, it's Earth against the reptilians now. Because, or whatever it is. And our differences
It bonds everybody together to fight a common.
And that's right. And we're a matchstick away from that happening. I mean, that is on. It's not like this is 30 years out. Those videos I sent you guys today.
Yeah.
They reaffirmed some things. We've got a generation from the reestablishment of Israel. That puts us at 2018. Something's going to happen soon.
Yeah, I want to go back to this. Really stood out to me. This is from what's this guy's name? Pike.
This is
Albert Pike.
All right.
Hey, can we?
Confederate general, 32nd degree
So
Freemason.
I just want to point something out real quick. So in the middle of that paragraph you just read about the Third World War, when he says, "We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists," that stuck out to me because
Right.
you guys know what a nihilist is, right? A
believes
nihilist.
there's nothing.
A nihilist believes that life is meaningless and there's literally no morality.
Wah, wah.
Now, atheists aren't even that extreme, right? They have a different view.
Atheists can be good people.
Well,
They
most
just
of them
don't
are.
believe-
Absolutely, yeah.
Most of them are. So they don't think life is meaningless. They raise kids. They have families. I have friends that are ardent atheists, but these are great dudes, and we hang out. I have no problem with but I don't know that I could hang out with a bunch of nihilists because life is clearly not meaningless.
That'd be depressing.
But if you look at all of the things that are actually going on, you look at the groups of people that are making all the noise and how they're acting and how, when you protest something, are you just, butt naked with F God written on your chest in the middle of the street? These people are nihilists. And that was written when?
1780.
No, 1870.
Okay, so
Well, what's interesting that I'm on board 100% with what you're saying, but can we get back this letter because you're doing it for your book? This is something that you're actually researching, right? And
look, there's a lot of controversy. This letter was in print in 1926.
That's what I was going to ask because it's dated 1871,
right?
Okay, and now it said apparently it came out. It was in a British museum
for a while. Yep.
Apparently, but I can't find anything backing up saying it was exactly there.
Look, this is a smoking gun, so you're going to get a lot of disinformation, a lot, and this is one of those that You can't go verify a source or get a citation outside of the 1926 book, which the name of it escapes me, but I want to say Pell was the name of Hall was the name of the guy that wrote about it. He was an RAF commander. I'll pull that up in a minute. But certainly the Second World War happened, and the Cold War. All these things happened, so in a sense it's self-evident. But it's interesting because I thought that the seeds of the Cold War was in this letter. And I know you want to get back to the Cold War, or to the letter, but I actually found a prediction of the Cold War in 1835. And this was by a guy named Alex de Tocqueville, French historian, and he wrote, here's the quote. Now, remember, this is 1835. United States has been in business for 50 years, 60 years. We're very shaky. Russia was almost just conquered by Napoleon. They're nothing. These two nations are really nothing on the scene. The British Empire is absolutely the power empire of the world. And he writes this, 1835. And I think if I did a little more research, we'd find out that he's linked into the mysteries, the secret religions, secret societies. There are now two great nations in the world which, starting from different points, seem to be advancing toward the same goal, the Russians and the Anglo-Americans. Both have grown in obscurity, and while the world's attention was occupied elsewhere, they have suddenly taken their place among the leading nations, making the world take note of their birth and their greatness almost at the same instant. All other peoples seem to have nearly reached their natural limits and to need nothing but to preserve them, but these two are growing. The American fights against natural obstacles. The Russian is at grips with men. The former combats the wilderness and barbarism. The latter, civilization with all its arms. America's conquests are made with the plowshare, Russia's with the sword. To attain their arms, the former relies on personal interest and gives free scope to the unguided strength and common sense of individuals. The latter, in a sense, concentrates the whole power of society in one man. One has freedom as the principal means of action, the other has servitude. Their point of departure is different and their paths diverse. Nevertheless, each seems called by some secret desire of Providence one day to hold in its hands the destinies of half of the world. Now, how the hell did that guy predict geopolitics 180 years into the future? Unless,
well,
I don't think the plan started with Albert Pike's 1871 letter. This plan was in the making before then. And they do, I don't know if this is cosmic law or them mocking us, but they announce what they're going to do. And they do it all over the place.
Yeah, because even this letter, now you said it was published in the 20s?
There was a 19. Let me see if I can pull that.
That's what I'd like to find out because
that brings me. You got to go to the paragraph about the Second World War, because if this was in the 26, I think you said,
Nazism didn't exist.
Well, yeah. So the Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed, and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel and Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. That's interesting because Nazism didn't exist in 26. Certainly not in 1871.
Yeah, the National Socialist Party, that I think was formed in the early 30s, I believe. NASD, which became the Nazi Party.
Yeah.
So this letter, I've got pretty good evidence that this letter appeared in a book by Cardinal Caro y Rodriguez, which was published in 1925. And it was named The Mystery of Freemasonry Unveiled. And there is another place.
And it came from a cardinal? That book?
Yes.
No, he would
apparently
know. He would know.
Club of Rome?
No, that's another one of those round table groups.
Oh, like the Legionnaires?
But that's interesting because that's one of the things I've read before about Nazism not existing for this letter, and so that had to be, that's they're claiming it had to be a fake because there was no Nazism, right?
Or
Or you might be reading a disinfo piece that gets some things wrong. Hoping
well,
that
that's one of the
you.
things I've heard, right? But the
Mhm.
other side of that story is when you start looking at all these secret societies and all these things that are going on, they basically created all that. You look at Russia. We put the bankers put the communists in charge in Russia. They overthrew the czars, right?
that's
Put
right.
the communists. They put the Lenin in, just like they did. If you go back and you look at World War II, you look who supplied all the money to Nazi Germany, who had none.
Yeah.
After World War I, they had that repayment plan that they had to do that they couldn't afford to pay. So that's why Germany was in the dumps. Then all of a sudden they started getting all this money. Where did it come from? Well, they've shown it come from Prescott Bush and all these, Henry Ford and all these people, I.G. Farben.
Yep.
Henry Ford was huge.
So they basically put they put him in like the Council of Foreign Relations. I'm going to go
I
back.
love
to that.
my car.
Yeah, me too.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here, so I'm going to close with this. The Nazi Party was abbreviated NSDAP, so NSDAP, I guess.
Yeah, it was the national.
It was active between 1920 and 1945.
Okay, well then possible. Yeah,
So
because it didn't
that's-
actually. The Nazi Party actually was.
It was the National Socialist German Workers' Party,
Right.
and the NSDAP comes from the German pronunciation of that, which I am not even going to attempt.
Yeah,
to
it got
murder.
shortened to Nazi.
But they were not anywhere near power.
No. I mean, they weren't a lot when Hitler joined them. They really didn't
That's
have a lot
right.
going on. It was
He
Hitler
was
that
the
gave
puppet
them
because
power
he was
because of his
That's
speaking ability
arguable that he hijacked
and
it.
his insanity.
Well, he's a Rothschild. You guys know
Yes.
that, right?
Yeah, isn't he a illegitimate son or something like that?
He's in the family.
So is the royal family.
And he wasn't just arbitrary. None of these guys are. They're all bloodline connected people. You guys want a couple of CFR quotes from the book?
Yes.
Sure.
All right, let's do a couple of them. And
Absolutely.
see if we can
Absolutely.
track these down throughout history. Here's one from. We'll just do in the order of my spreadsheet. 1983. Oh, this guy's interesting. This was said by Congressman Larry McDonald. Do you guys know who that is? This was 1983.
No, who was he?
U.S. Congressman. He would end up dying later that year. He was a World War II vet. He said, you have people who are part of the elitist structure of this country that have dominated the country openly for 40 years. So this is a guy that was in the know. Here's the note that's going on the quote I just gave you. Congressman McDonald, World War II vet, appeared on CNN's Crossfire in 1983 with Pat Buchanan and Tom Braden. The heated interview pitted McDonald against co-host Braden. McDonald trying to expose the Rockefeller apparatus, and Larry McDonald has a lot of speeches that are on congressional minutes, which you can go and review. But he was basically saying Rockefellers are satanic and evil, and they're trying to set up a one-world government. And Braden, he was with the CIA and the Council on Foreign Relations, was totally outmatched in the debate with McDonald. It would be one of McDonald's last appearances before his death. Do you know how he died?
No idea.
No, how did he die?
He was on flight KAL Flight 007, which was shot down by the Soviets. He was on that airplane. Richard Nixon was also supposed to be on that airplane. It stopped in Anchorage,
Yeah, but
Alaska.
he was vacationing in Alaska, wasn't he?
And he was pulled off of that plane for some reason. So they're like, don't get on this plane.
Well, it's because it was going to get shot down.
All these things. Yeah, these things are planned, guys.
Like, hey, get him off of there. It's not his time yet. We gotta.
Yeah, but if they knew it was going to get shot down, don't you think they just would have left Dick on it?
No, they had plans for him.
I mean, who liked him?
Yeah,
He
he had to get us
probably-
off the gold standard and put the nail in the
Oh,
Yeah,
coffin.
he cut his deal.
Yeah.
You know how he got into politics?
No, I don't know a whole lot about Richard Nixon.
He answered an ad. All right. And here's the ad said, Basically, I'm going to
Puppet
paraphrase.
wanted.
It said we're looking for basically a greasy dude that is willing to do anything to get ahead. In fact, look it up, Tony. See, Nixon
my.
answers wanted. That's how he got into politics, and he basically was a puppet, total puppet. And he exchanged his soul for power. And then I think Washington Post investigation that was made famous in All the President's Men.
Yeah.
I mean, that investigation they tried to derail that several times, but it just kept, Woodward and Bernstein kept finding just enough to keep it going. It ultimately took down his administration.
Yeah.
Spiro Agnew resigned. John Mitchell, G. Gordon Liddy went to prison. All these guys went to jail. And I've listened to secret recorded conversations between, I think it was the chief of staff at the time, Rob Colson, what's his name, talking to one of the CIA guys that was in charge of planting the bugs, because these guys control who the candidates are. And McGovern was running against Muskie, I want to say.
Yeah, I believe so.
And they wanted to run against McGovern, not Muskie, because I don't think Muskie was their guy. And so they started doing that practice. It's called rat fucking, where they were sabotaging his own campaign, putting information, just very much like what happened with Donald Trump. And it ruined his campaign, and McGovern ended up being and maybe I've got the names reversed, but McGovern ended up running against Nixon, which was what they wanted. I don't believe it's so that Nixon could win, but in that scenario, it wouldn't have mattered who would have won.
Right, because they had
That
control.
would have been
It
fine,
was their
yeah.
guy. And they've been doing this. It's manipulation behind the scenes. And, you'll never hear about this on mainstream media. You've got to go find the empirical data. You got to go read it in the congressional minutes with your own eyes, and you're all of a sudden, you're like, holy mackerel. Like, what we just believe is reality is so far from the truth. Let me know if you guys are ready for another CFR quote.
Shoot.
Bring it.
This is from John Rarick. I don't have a year on this yet. He was a U.S. congressman. He would have said this in the 1960s or 1970s. The CFR, this is his quote, the CFR dedicated to one world government, financed by a number of the largest tax-exempt foundations and wielding such power and influence. Wait, did we already cover this one in this show? Wielding such power and influence over our lives in the areas of finance, business, labor, military, education, and mass communication media should be familiar to every American concerned with good government and with preserving and defending the U.S. Constitution and our free enterprise system. Yet, the nation's right to know machinery, the news media, usually so aggressive in exposures to inform our people, remain conspicuously silent when it comes to the CFR, its members, and their activities. The CFR is the establishment. And if you remember in the 1960s, that was essentially the coined term of that decade for the Illuminati, basically. The CFR is the establishment. Not only does it have influence and power in key decision-making positions at the highest levels of government to apply pressure from above, but it also finances and uses individuals and groups to bring pressure from below to justify the high-level decisions for converting the United States from a sovereign constitutional republic into a servile member of a one-world dictatorship. So so many of these guys end up converting to Christianity when all of a sudden they realize, holy cow, all these unbelievable predictions, all of them right on the money with detail. There's no other explanation because the statistical possibility that it's just a random outcome of humanity, it's impossible. It's impossible. There are just too many of these things that have happened. Do you guys want another one?
Bring it.
Do you want the Nixon quote or the Nixon?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
give us the Nixon wanted.
Nixon, a corporate puppet. According to a biography of Richard Nixon, his close personal and political ties with the Bush family go back to 1941, when Nixon claims he read an ad in an L.A. newspaper placed by a wealthy group of Wall Street businessmen led by Prescott Bush, the father of George H.W., They wanted a young, malleable candidate to run for Congress. Nixon applied for the position and won the job. Nixon became a mouthpiece for the Bush group. In fact, Prescott Bush is credited with creating the winning ticket of Eisenhower-Nixon in 1952. Very interesting.
1962, Dan Smoot. This guy was a former FBI agent, then became an activist, kind of like following the footsteps of Ted Gunderson. He published the...
Ted Gunderson was killed, wasn't he?
Well, he's dead. I don't think it's registered technically as a murder. And he was getting up there in years already.
Wasn't he the one they found radiation poisoning and found it in his ductwork?
Possibly.
Or is that my tin hat?
Yeah, but that happens all the time.
It happens more than you realize.
Well, look at Scalia.
Radiation in your ductwork. I mean, that happens all the time.
Scalia was getting up there in age, you know.
Even though he had no health issues at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That wasn't technically a murder, was it?
Dan Smoot was a former member of the FBI headquarters staff in Washington, D.C. He came out with a program called the Smoot Report. Now, this was back in the day. This was Bill Cooper before Bill Cooper. The Smoot Report ran from 1957 to 1971. It was one of the first alternative news radio shows. And he wrote about the Council on Foreign Relations in his first book called The Invisible Government, which was published in 1962. He said, quote, "The ultimate aim of the CFR is to create a one-world socialist system and to make the U.S. an official part of it." Another guy from the 60s, although the quote was in print in 95, Arthur Schlesinger. He hung out with the JFK administration. And he was on the inside of it. And his quote is, "We are not going to achieve a new world order without paying for it in blood as well as in words and money." And that appeared in the CFR journal Foreign Affairs in July of 1975. In fact, I'm going to change that to 75. And then it appeared also in his book called Foreign Affairs, which came out in 1995. So you can follow just the CFR component of it. Yep. And, you know, the CFR is not the end-all, be-all. They're just another grain of sand in the
but
mix.
They got their fingers in a lot of stuff, man, because I don't know when they jumped in, maybe it was that early, but I mean, you know, you're talking about Kennedy and Nixon, and between them you get Johnson. And with Johnson, William Bundy, the guy who drafted the Tonkin Gulf Resolution. He was CFR. And Bundy's father-in-law, Dean Acheson, he was the leader of a senior team of advisors nicknamed the Wise Men that advised Lyndon Johnson. And they're the ones that persuaded him to step up the Vietnam War.
Well, Dick Cheney, I was just watching Dick Cheney's comment where he's giving, they've got so many people that give speeches in front of the CFR. It's right down the street, right in Washington. They go down, and Cheney's, making a joke out of it that, I was, part of the CFR. Actually, I was a director, right, for many years. And then it says under his kind of breath, like a joke in front of the crowd, of course, I don't tell any of my constituents back there, and to get reelected. He didn't want anyone else to know, but it's all it's very secretive. Yeah. And here's a David Rockefeller quote. I don't think you said any Rockefeller quotes.
No, I've got a ton of them, but
you probably had this one. "Some even believe we are a part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it." So it's not like this is hidden. There is a global agenda, even though you watch on the news and you'll hear all these people commenting, "Oh, that's fake. That's not real. There's not one world agenda."
Yeah, it's not a conspiracy theory anymore because it is. They acknowledge it. You guys know who John Foster Dulles is?
Yep.
Was it Alan Dulles' brother?
Yes. So Alan Dulles, who he was head of the CIA.
Nice guy.
Probably right out of a blood drinking Luciferian family, especially when you got one that's the head of the CIA, and then Kennedy essentially fires him out of the CIA, and he's got a brother, John Foster Dulles, who was one of the founders of the Council on Foreign Relations and later the Secretary of State. His quote was, and he wrote this in 1942, all right, and this was in, he said this while chairman of the Federal Council of Churches Commission. He issued this quote in this report saying, remember, 1942, "We need a world government, strong, immediate limitation on national sovereignty, international control of all armies and navies, a universal system of money." He's right out of their playbook. I think you said something about Chester Ward, Admiral Chester Ward. Was that you,
Yes.
Howard?
Yes. I quoted him when he left the CFR.
Yeah, he was in it for 20 years. He was also the JAG of the Navy, Judge Advocate General. And was this the quote you had? "The most powerful clique in these elitist groups have one objective in common. They want to bring about the surrender of the sovereignty of the national independence of the United States. A second clique of international members in the CFR compromises the Wall Street international bankers and their key agents. Primarily, they want the world banking monopoly from whatever power ends up in the control of the global government."
Mine was like that, but not that.
It seems that there's this universal focus on destroying the sovereignty.
Well, and they
of
say
the
it
United
over and over
States.
again.
Of the United States specifically. Why are they not pointing out Australia?
Well,
or
because
why not
Because
South
we were
Africa?
unique.
the United
Well,
States
see.
has it's unique in that it has a constitution and it's not easily overthrown.
Other countries have constitutions.
Well, and it's resources.
It's what's in our constitution that's threatening to people like this, to these despots of the world.
And it's the vast resources of our country.
Well,
I mean,
most of them are
we
so
could
China.
literally...
came directly as a result of our constitution.
Right. But, I mean, you think about it, we could basically tell everybody else to piss off and survive. We could close our borders, stop dealing with everybody else.
You think we could become an autarky that quick?
Well, I mean, it would take time. But
Yeah, it's going to be bloody, dude.
Well,
I know, but what I'm saying is we're one of the few, because of the vast resources in this country, we're one of the few countries that could actually survive on its own. So
Yeah, we
that's why
could.
they have to break our will.
and that's why you find all of our stuff being imported now. Okay? Because you can't, all our minerals have been sold out to the Chinese.
Oh, yeah.
Right? This has been a plan going on for many years. All the things that you guys are talking about is obviously a plan. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's actually been in practice for quite a while, that they are systematically taking down step by step all these different areas, from our finances to the minerals to our trade agreements. All these things are working against to bring down the U.S. And that's what has become so obvious that I find it strange that people can't see
I don't know
this.
that they actually want to bring down the U.S. What they want to do is they want to enslave the U.S. citizens. It's the fact that we actually have freedom by our Constitution, and we have been raised to think freely and to do what we feel is right.
But you won't be able to have control over the U.S. until there's a financial meltdown where there's a one world currency.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what the plan is.
They
and
got
that's
to
what they're
break
working
us,
towards.
and then our kids will grow up being broken, and they won't know life any other way.
Yeah.
But they have to break us first because we've known
Freedom.
We've watched this happen during our lifetimes.
Yeah, a big significant part of it. Still, we can remember.
The seeds were planted long before we were born, but we've watched these plans start to come to fruition one by one during our lifetime.
Yeah, and really, the fundamental transformation of America that went
Yeah.
on over the past 8 years was pretty.
But it's under.
Oh, it was longer than 8 years, man.
What's
though.
interesting?
Well, that was a dig on Obama. So
It's under the darkness, though, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of behind our backs. It's under it's not really out in the open. Here's a good quote by another quote by David Rockefeller at the Bilderberg meeting in 1991.
Oh, is this the thank you Washington Post?
Yes.
Yeah, read it.
We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity. During those years, lights of publicity during those years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. This is like right before, I think this is probably right before Herbert Walker made his comment, New World Order, right? Was that
he made that in he actually didn't make it once. He said that dozens of times. I've got so many of those.
I think it was September 1990.
It was actually, it was 9/11, 1991.
Right. That's odd, isn't it?
Not an
the last sentence of that quote is what I find the most interesting.
The super national sovereignty of an intellectual elite and the world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practice in past centuries. Is that what you're talking about?
That is exactly what I'm talking about.
James Herman, this kind of ties to the balance of power between Russia and the United States. He's known for, he was the 18th chairman of the XIM Bank, Export-Import Bank, and he was giving a speech in Moscow in the year 2000. And he bluntly acknowledged that Russia is currently providing sophisticated military equipment to Iran and Syria that will be used against the United States during the coming conflict in the Middle East, knowing that this was in 2000, okay? Knowing about this coming conflict. 9/11 had not happened yet. Now, Gulf War I had, but we'd pulled out. We now needed a reason to go back again. And he goes back and he cites, he's going back to 1934. His quote is, "The Roosevelt administration established the U.S. XIM, the Export-Import Bank, in 1934 to fund the USSR. The conflict between communism and capitalism is a ruse. It's fake. It was always fake."
And it was perpetrated by the media and movies and all those.
Yeah, we believe it because we see 50 movies that talk about this is a true story. It gets ingrained in your head. You get a picture of the world, but the truth of it is so far. It's just so far from what is true. It's spooky. But once you figure out how to find that first kernel of truth, and Nick, you and I were talking about this on the way up here, it's when you find that first glitch in the matrix, and if you're some people just shrug their shoulders and forget about it. And I think maybe that's why God doesn't like cowards, because that's what a coward would do. And he doesn't like ignorant people either. And that's what to ignore is to be ignorant. And it's funny, but you find my first glitch in the matrix was discovering 9/11 was a sham. I mean, yes, buildings fell down and people died. It wasn't staged in that way, but the 4 airplanes did not have 19 Saudis on it. In fact,
they found his passport.
Yeah.
It was clean.
What are you talking about?
It wasn't even burnt.
Yeah, they're properly vetted, right?
It was a block. Oh, no, his passport was a block away. They knew who he was.
We talked about this a little bit. Dave and I were talking about a little bit before the show. This is the stuff where you start to get angry. I'm starting to get Alex Jones like. You're just gonna start yelling and
start
screaming,
sweating and wiping your brow.
You're going nuts. But they had a round table that show the 5 on Fox News. You watch your little things here and there. They specifically in a show. They stopped and started talking about 9/11 for no reason. No good reason I could think of. It just came up, and they went around the table, and everyone had to talk about how ridiculous 9/11 conspiracy theories are. From person to person to person.
Was this?
This was a couple weeks ago. No, it was just a few weeks ago. I swear. I'm watching the show, and I'm like, wait a minute. Why are they talking about this? Why are they talking? 9/11 had no impact on anything.
If you get enough people to hear the same lie over and over again,
it's like,
eventually they believe it.
Yeah.
What's the Goebbels?
Yeah.
But I was so angry because they were talking about that, like, oh, that's just ridiculous. How could you think something like this? And I'm like,
well, the thing is, there's just as good a chance that they believe that as there is that they're being told to say that.
I do suspect that they do believe it. There was a segment that was in The Anatomy of a Great Deception where Tucker Carlson is interviewing Dr. David Ray Griffin about his book, The New Pearl Harbor, which was 9/11. Now, what's funny is Dr. Griffin is a theologian. He is a man of God, and he noticed some problems, and he's a philosophy professor to boot. He comes out with this book, and maybe you guys remember the segment, but this is where Carlson's saying, you're a sinner for saying that our own government did this, because they didn't. They just didn't do it. And he was telling us what to think. He wasn't even asking Griffin any questions. And I put in just a snippet of that interview in the movie. Now, flash forward. Tucker Carlson's on an interview with Alex Jones. And Alex Jones asks Carlson about, well, don't you find it odd that Building 7 just collapsed? And Carlson goes, what are you talking about? And I go, and Alex Jones said, that third building that collapsed? And Carlson's like, I didn't even know anything about that.
Nobody does.
Well, he is a effing...
That's his job, right.
We got about 20 million people who do.
Well,
Alex Jones then shows him a video of this, and Tucker Carlson, he's in shock. He's like, oh my God, that looks like a controlled demolition. Now, that interview happened a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
flash forward now.
It leads me to believe that the guys we have on television...
Talking heads?
The talking heads...
Well,
they don't
personality.
Do their own.
That's it.
They're just reading.
Yeah,
they have
reading
charisma,
teleprompters,
and that's all they are. They're just they like to get ushered into nice restaurants. They like the fanfare, but they are no. They're not. Are they only less informed than I think the regular public? I don't necessarily think they're evil and in on it. There are some I do think, and I'm going to give you a Walter Cronkite one in a minute.
He's
Walter Cronkite.
I think the 5 on
Council
Fox.
on Foreign Relations, Walter Cronkite. Yeah.
Who's the
Dana Perino?
No, the guy.
Greg Gutfield.
Gutfield. Oh, he was in the movie as well, and I really have a problem with this guy because he had a segment where he's like, and what these 9/11 truthers are doing to the families, it's a crime. I mean, you're harming the families by asking, by trying to make this event like our own government did it.
He tries to ridicule.
And that's all they've got.
Shaming.
Because you can't debate the facts. They can't debate it in that arena because you will lose. So they have to turn conspiracy theorists into, wackos. Like Nick was asking me this week, why do they allow... if people are discovering the shape of the world maybe not is not round, why do they allow that conversation to happen? And there are so many operations going on by the evil forces in this world. There's no way to keep them all out of the news. Everyone's life touches one or two things. That's why everyone, even quote unquote normal people in this world, they all have a secret little conspiracy theory somewhere. It's just a theory. Just about all of them do. And I've got you'd never know they're MBAs, heads of banks, doctors. Some believe in Bigfoot, some do believe in aliens, some do believe Sandy Hook was a total made-up event. But they haven't gone the distance to put it all together. So you can't keep all of it out of the news. And in fact, they sort of embrace it.
Well, if I wanted to kill the flat Earth discussion, just because I just use insert any subject here. Actually, they did the same thing with 9/11 in the beginning, right? Because all these people came out saying that something's fishy here, so they have them all on TV interviewing them, so they can just turn around and discredit them and say they're idiots. These people are dangerous, even going so far as to call it treasonous.
So ironically, it's the ones that are truly guilty of treason that are calling the real patriots.
And that's like the whole flat Earth thing. Of course they're gonna. Don't be surprised now that NBA player came out and dropped the flat Earth bomb on everybody. That eventually this will make its way onto some network, mainstream media interview for somebody who's a flat Earth person, so that later on, after the interview's over, now the narrative will be that these guys, you got these. 13th century throwbacks think the Earth is still flat, and they're obviously just to mock them, ridicule
And
them.
98% of the population will buy it.
So that what happened with 9/11, what I remember is the kind of the same thing where they almost were just coming right out and saying, if you even look into this, you're somehow
deranged.
Yeah, like, you
Well,
know, it's
that's-
not even. Why would you even look into it when you
You're-
know
you're
this
un-American.
it's impossible that they did? They didn't do this.
You know you're an evil person because there's people died, right? Which we know. Yeah, we feel bad about. We
Which
saw
is
that
actually
stuff.
And what about
why
It was
soldiers?
horrible. That's what really pisses me off, because you really want to find out who did it.
right
Get
because
down to the point who did it, and let's go.
yeah, you really want the truth, and that's actually more a cause for the families than just accepting the BS story.
Yeah, I think if I wouldn't have found overwhelming testimony from all of the families saying we need a real investigation, I might have dropped it out of, you know, I got into it because I thought I'd uncovered the big one, some massive conspiracy, and I didn't realize at the time this is nothing. This was one little sliver of an operation that, you know, it's domino affected into the world we have today. It introduced the Patriot Act, which was pre-written, and, you know, put on everyone's desk at 5 a.m. and they're voting on it at 11 a.m. and it's a 900-page document. And these they didn't read any part of it.
Well,
It was all on emotion. Then it launches. You know, as a result, we've got dozens, if not hundreds, of new bases all in the Middle East, all surrounding Israel. If you look at like the red dots, it's a semicircle around Israel. Millions of people have died. We're sending our soldiers over there, even to this day. They're coming back with post-traumatic stress disorder because they're being commanded to essentially just murder families, just shoot them up, take children away from their parents. It's happening. It's created I'm sure, ramped up terrorism, and for me, it's a very still live cause, and it's one of the best ways that you can see something is wrong. And once, depending on the type of person you are, a lot of people, they just can't take it. I've lost respect for a lot of people that they looked at the evidence and they made up a little lie to their head and then convinced themselves that it wasn't even worth looking into. And I'm just like, you know what? You are lucky you were born in this country, because that's not what it was founded on. This country was founded on ass kickers, entrepreneurs, people that were willing to go to a completely unclaimed wild territory. They took chances leaving their comfortable lifestyle in Europe to come here. I mean, we're badasses. We are the descendants of badasses. And if we keep, if our pussy meter keeps going up a little much higher, this thing's gone. This little 200-year experience, and you take this for granted. These doofuses that are so stuck on the daily treadmill of their life, they have not stopped to take a look around to see maybe there really is a problem here.
Well, I think it's a huge problem when you have this new weird beta male, gender fluid female, whatever the heck is going on out here. The badasses are few and far between in this young generation. There are still some, but
they sit there and listen to shows like that five table, the five, and
Mika Brzezinski, Anderson Cooper, all these people are just in on all this stuff, and they are pushing propaganda, plain and simple.
Yeah, I don't even know how anyone could stomach watching MSNBC. I cannot even. I don't even know how you could even stomach it. I mean, it is foam at the mouth, deception, rabid lie. I mean, it's just and people are like, yeah, see, I mean, it's unbelievable. Actually, the poison that they throw out there every single day.
And just like we were talking about a little earlier, some may not know. They're just talking heads, right? But some of them are in on it. This guy here, this Chris Cuomo, Okay, you've seen him on, I don't know what station he's on, but he's been throwing out so much misinformation that you can't do this because you're clueless. This is a plan that there's people out there that are throwing out propaganda as a plan, and people can't see this. That our media,
Well, like I said,
for how
I
many
look
years?
at-
Go back to Council of Foreign Relations. These people have infiltrated them. They own them. Rupert Murdoch, okay, who owns Fox News and others, he's a Council on Foreign Relations guy. So they're pushing their agenda.
But you don't get in front of the American public like that unless you've been vetted and you're in the group, as Newt Gingrich said. He's not part of the secret society.
He hasn't been initiated, right? Yeah.
Now Trump still could be a big deception, giving us this false sense of temporary security. And the more I look into it, the more I'm leaning in that direction. A lot of it will have to do with Mark Taylor's prophecies. If even one thing of his prophecies does not happen, Mark Taylor's the man that prophesied that Trump would win the presidency 5 years before he even announced he was running. He talked about the detail of what would happen. He got the part right where they were going to slam him with so much garbage, but he would keep rising above it. Another interesting detail that we're going to know black and white. And if it does not happen, then he was a false prophet. He said that under Trump, there would be 5 Supreme Court justices that would be replaced. And he said one of them would die. Now, that happened. That ended up happening, Justice Scalia. And we're now talking about replacing his position. 3 of them would fall because of a scandal of some sort, and 1 would just retire because of old age. So
there's a good possibility that will absolutely happen.
But we'll find out. If it doesn't happen, then we know that. Well,
Scalia is one. He has to be replaced.
Ginsburg's
up there.
She's like 180.
She can't even stay awake
soon.
And I believe she's a Luciferian also.
I think I'll bet you she is.
I'm pretty sure based on things I've read. But then you have Kennedy, who's supposed to get replaced. Right, so that's 3. So who's left? You got Thomas. You've got
Thomas will be around for a little bit.
Yeah.
He'll be around for a minute.
Yeah, he's not.
You got Roberts, who is I don't know about that guy either. But
if I'm thinking scandal, I'm thinking Thomas.
Hey, look, these guys.
No way, dude.
You don't think so?
Clarence Thomas?
No, it's funny. I wouldn't be surprised.
Wasn't he scandalized on the way in?
Well, it
He was
was
on the way
fake. I mean, a real scandal where 3 of them go down.
Well, the thing is, something resurfaced about, and I haven't done research. I have to figure that out. But look, these guys aren't dumb. They know law, and here their buddy that they've been working with, Anthony Scalia. There was no autopsy.
died of natural causes.
The autopsy was done over the telephone, and they declared it heart attack, which you can't do without opening up the chest. There were so many things that break
which was, an autopsy is procedure in that state.
Yeah.
Even if they find somebody that's homeless, they do an autopsy on. That's the.
Well, yeah, but I
procedure.
think there's a rule in Texas. If you're above a certain level in government and die in Texas, you can't have an autopsy.
Maybe.
So these guys aren't dumb. Their coworker just got silenced. You don't think that's going to resonate with them? Like, oh, maybe I will go along with your plan then, or I will vote this way on this particular law. It must be scary for a lot of these guys. And when they make these cryptic comments, like if you could only imagine what goes on behind the scenes. In fact, I think it was a Supreme Court. Was it Warren Harding or Earl Warren that said? I don't think it was Earl Warren, but the world is run by very different personages than what is imagined by the public.
Well, that's said by a lot of people.
A lot of them cryptically talk, like Neil Armstrong did at the 25-year reunion of the Apollo 11 missions. He opens up his commentary with, well, parrots don't fly. Like the Wright brothers said, parrots don't fly very well. But what do? They say what they're supposed to say. Then he goes on to go, there are truths that need to be uncovered that are protected. Again, cryptic. So Walter Cronkite, this is kind of interesting. I'm gonna give you 2 quotes from Walter Cronkite. I don't have this one sourced yet, but he did say this. And for a news anchor to have an opinion, we're losing what the core of the institution of journalism is supposed to be. You're not supposed to promote anything. You're not even supposed to be in commercials to promote products.
Unless you're a columnist.
So Cronkite says, we must strengthen the United Nations as a first step toward a world government patterned after our own government with a legislature, executive, and judiciary police. Okay, that sounds pretty harmless until you're clued into the fact that this one world government is an ancient demonic plan that was predicted that in the last days, a generation after Israel, there's going to be this big push towards a one world government. Satan's behind it, and it's going to be the thing that gets us to accept this mark. And whatever it is, injection, chip, who knows? Oh, but remind me to tell you about Aaron Russo. So later on, Walter Cronkite is. Let me get to this because I was in shock. I was in shock that he said this. He's 1999. He's giving an acceptance speech for the World Federalist Association's Global Governance Award, which he won. And this was in October 19th, 1999. And I saw this on video. You can go just look up Cronkite, Federalist Association's Global Governance Award, and go to the 6-minute and 53-second mark. And he says, "Join me. I am glad to sit here at the right hand of Satan."
What?
Yeah.
Cronkite said that.
And it was not. You watch the interview, and you will. It's not a joke.
No, he did. I think I saw that. He did say that, and he kind of made it sound like because they were in that group that they were Luciferian, right? Because somebody had claimed to be this, and he was happy to be there.
Yeah, I think these guys are. And here again, the same way.
Walter Cronkite.
The newscasters are saying that. They're already telling us these buildings are going to collapse before they even collapse. Obviously, the press release was pre-printed before the event happened, which is exactly something that happened to him, and it's probably what made him famous. He was the guy. CBS News, breaking news, John F. Kennedy's assassination. Now, you go back and look at the actual testimonies, because they're all over. I mean, video was now in play. Every frickin' witness that was there are saying, there was a dozen gunshots, 8 gunshots, gunshots coming from the grassy knoll, gunshots coming from over my head, gunshots from the Tex-Mex building, gunshots from the school book depository. But what does the press release say? He starts off with 3 shots fired in Dallas. I mean, the 3-bullet theory starts right there. And because Walter Cronkite said it on television,
it was the truth.
Millions and millions of people never bothered to go find the facts because they're sheep. Their brain, they don't want to think. They don't want to question things.
Well, it's the media's job to tell us what to think. According to genius
Mika Brzezinski.
Brzezinski.
Rhodes Scholar, right?
Whatever.
Rhodes Scholar. There's another good one.
That's an interesting one, right?
Rhodes. Yeah.
We'll have to do that on another episode.
Yeah.
Well, what do you guys want to wrap up with? We got a couple minutes left.
I think Dave should do a book about this stuff.
What, the Rhodes? It's almost done.
It's about this stuff and so much more.
900 quotes total. We're going to break it up over 2 volumes. Is the website up yet for it, Howard?
Not yet.
All right. I won't tell it to you then. But the book's called The 401 Book. Yes, there will be 401 quotes, maybe a few more. But the 401 is a numerical significance of the concept of alpha to omega. It covers everything. And it does do that, but the deeper meaning at the end of the day is what is our solution? Because, we're aware that there's something bigger in this world than just this physical life. We are bodies, we are souls with a body, not bodies with a soul. We've already established the fact that we're going somewhere. And Alpha to Omega was one of the names of Jesus Christ. He gave himself many, many names. And at the end of the day, there is only one way you will have an existence either with God or without him. Now, whatever hell, I don't, whatever that exactly is there really a place of fire and brimstone and sulfur? I actually do, because sulfur, the smell of sulfur is reported in all these alien landings when it smelled like sulfur. That's a little clue as to where these aliens really come from, if you ask me. So I do believe that this is somewhere. And if it's at the center of Earth, and if Earth is a ball, and if it were at the center, that would be the bottomless pit, because you can't...
Yeah, the center of a sphere
would be
is
bottomless.
Bottomless pit.
Especially if it's flat.
Geometrically, anyway.
So first you'd have to understand that there is something after this life. And then once you're there, then you've got a choice to make of where do you want to spend eternity. And you're not going to get taken into heaven. God's not just going to arbitrarily pull you out against your will. He runs a just kingdom. And I think he's set this entire thing up so that people have to earnestly seek him, like he says. But you can find him. You can scientifically prove he exists. That goes over most people's head. That is just too deep for me. I'm going to watch Friends tonight. And I get it, because I love letting loose from time to time. But at the end of the day, there is only one way off this prison planet. And it's going to be. There's only one way to get yourself saved from a horrifying, unending existence. And that is understanding who Jesus Christ was. And he's the only way out of here. Buddha's not going to do it. George Bush is not going to do it. He's the only way.
Obama's not going to do it?
No.
Okay, well, we're going to end with that. Thanks for cheering us up, Dave.
That actually is.
That's
a good message right there.
Yeah, there's some hope. There's some hope.
You can get out of this. If you figure that out, your life's a success. It is the meaning of life. Doesn't matter what you did in your physical world. If you figure that out, you will be a successful living entity for eternity.
Well, personally,
figure it out, people.
Personally, I can't wait to see the book, but right now we got to go. So we'll see you next week.